you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Here, let's let the Iron Lady sing it, because my voice is there you go. It's better when she does it. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate it. As always, we're bringing the most smartest people, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House advisors, the government officers, all the cool people who have these really interesting stories that they bring and share, and these spinsters of tales. Spinsters of Tales. I'm trying to sound educated this morning, but they bring us their great novels and all the stuff that can just change your world with the stories they tell and entertain us as well. We have another amazing author on the show. This is her debut novel. It's called Radiant Heat. It comes out January 23rd, 2024. Sarah Jane Collins joins us on the show. We're going to be talking to her and us. We'll be talking about her latest book. She's a writer, editor, and journalist from Brisbane, Australia. She moved to New York by way of Sydney and Melbourne. Her work has appeared in The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald, Overland, and others. She has an MFA in fiction from Columbia University. Her fiction has won the Overland Fair Australia Prize and been shortlisted for other awards. And although New York is her home now, she misses the beaches of Australia, but not the spiders. I love it. Welcome to the show, Sarah Jane. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am excellent. We're just getting rolling here on the Monday morning of the thing over here. So give us the .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Okay, I'm on Instagram primarily, Sarah Jane Marie, and I'm on X, I guess it's called now, not Twitter. Same handle, and Facebook, all those places. So Great. That's where I am.
There you go. So its billed as After the Fire, the Reckoning Begins, Radiant Heat. Give us a 30,000 overview, if you would, please, of the book.
Sure. So Radiant Heat is the story of a woman who narrowly survives a very severe bushfire, or as you would call them in America, a wildfire. And then she finds a dead woman in a car in her driveway who she's never met before. But the woman has her name and address on a piece of paper, and she doesn't know why she's there. And this kind of leads her down a rabbit hole of chasing her own past, but also the reason for this woman to be at her house at that point in time.
And I'd just like to point out right now that it was not me that did that. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. It's a novel. Come on. So this is pretty interesting. Now, this is your first debut novel. Congratulations. Yeah. These are always fun. And what kind of led you to write about this sort of topic? I mean, no, bushfires are big in Australia. What was it that tripped you on to this plot?
So I was a journalist in Melbourne for 5 years and in Sydney for 5 years as well. But while I was working in Melbourne, there was a very severe bushfire called the Black Saturday bushfire that killed 173 people in 2009. And that fire was kind of unprecedented. There'd never been a catastrophe like that in Australia before. There's been other fires since that have been very devastating, but not quite as much life has been lost. Mm-hmm. And so as a journalist, I covered a lot of the recovery after that fire and spoke to a lot of people that had lived through it and kind of saw the community rebuilding firsthand. And I also covered the courts in Victoria where a lot of the kind of mid-tier offences get committed, a lot of stuff involving nasty situations domestically and violence against women. And so those two threads were always things that I were interested in exploring, the idea of, how do we rebuild after a big crisis, and also what is the kind of impact on the lives of Australian women from these kind of terrible events that they experience. So I sat down one day and I just started writing. And I wrote the first chapter actually over a decade ago now. But then I just put it down and did a lot of other work and came back to it when I moved over to New York to do my MFA at Columbia.
There you go. It's billed as a vivid, emotionally intense, and satisfying cerebral psychological thriller in the manner of Tana French, I believe that is, or Gillian Flynn. I'm reading it I'm peeking behind the camera that's on the screen. So congratulations. It sounds like it's getting a lot of great reviews and stuff. Tell us about so this book was 10 years in the writing. Is that correct then?
Yeah, I mean, on and off. So I think I wrote the first chapter, and the first chapter is largely the same, which is surprising to me because, you would think you would go through a lot of edits and different iterations. And I did actually do that, but I came back to that first chapter almost exactly as it was. But then I didn't write anything for a while, and then I kind of wrote it in a big chunk for 2 years between 2016 and 2018. And then, edits and revisions for a couple of years after that. The publishing industry is a very slow moving beast. It doesn't get things out into the world particularly quickly. So,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we get books that are nonfiction, about a story or something. And then it's kind of interesting how, even if when it's delayed a year and a half, sometimes by publishers, because, they do their thing, it'll still be relevant when it comes out, like sometimes more relevant. And you're just like, hey, did you plan this way?
Yeah.
We had somebody on a politic book recently that were like, hey, did you plan on knowing what was going on here? Because you sure nailed it on that book. But so give us a little bit more about your background. What inspired you to want to be a writer? You've obviously done a lot of writing outside the book. What got you into that field? How did you grow up? What shaped you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Brisbane, which is Australia's third largest city, I guess. It's sort of, I when I'm trying to explain Australia to Americans, I often say that Queensland, which is the state that Brisbane is in, is like the Florida of Australia. So I guess, I guess that would make Brisbane like Miami or something, but I've not been to Miami, so I can't say. But,
is that kind of a reference of the Florida man, Florida woman sort of headlines?
I mean, there's definitely a little bit of that vibe in Queensland. I'm not going to lie. A
little bit of bath salts, face.
Yeah, there's crocodiles and tropical weather and all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, not to be stereotyping my home state or the state of Florida, but yeah, that's kind of my comparison for Americans. Anyway, so I grew up there, and my father is very passionate about theatre, and so we saw a lot of theatre growing up, and he actually directed a lot of amateur theatre. Oh, wow. And so I guess storytelling and stories were very, very important in my family as a child. My mom is a huge reader. We had like 1,000 books in our upstairs living room. My brother just would spend all day, every day reading books. And so that was sort of how I visited the rest of the world from my little bedroom in Brisbane. And I just always loved to write from as soon as I knew how to do it. I was obsessed with writing things. And I would always write letters instead of having conversations. And when I was a kid, I decided that being a novelist wasn't a very financially smart career path. So I thought, you know what, I'll be a newspaper journalist. That's a really guaranteed money kind of job. This is like, the 1980s. And and then I went to university and I got a job on a newspaper. And 3 months into working at that newspaper, they had their first big round of redundancies because it was 2007. And this is when all the newspapers started, cutting staff. So I started my newspaper career at exactly the wrong time to start a newspaper career. And I did that for a while. And I guess I just always couldn't put down the idea of writing a book. So here we are.
What a great way to grow up. Stories, I always say on the show, stories are the owner's manual to life, and it's how we learn, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, or we love the labyrinth texture of stories and what they tell us and how we view the world and how we view ourselves and how we view people. Boy, I'm really being pontificating, all right, on this riff. But I tell young people, I'm like, be a story collector. Go through life and collect stories, and because that's how we learn. Television. It didn't occur to me. I was a real idiot, and I still am. Actually, I think we all know that. The audience is like, he's an idiot. But I didn't. It just never struck me till I was 50 that I'd been a story collector. I'd been a griot collecting stories all my life, and how important it was all about stories. It never occurred to me that film and books and TV and all the stuff we consume are stories. It's the fabric of life, and it just never really. I just really had that epiphany, like, holy shit, it's all stories.
Well, you got there eventually, and that's what matters.
That's true. That's true. I finally came around. That's usually how it works.
We lived with my grandmother as well, and she loved to just tell a story. Like she would just tell a story about my aunts and my great aunts and uncle, or my mum growing up, or anything like that, and she would just go on and on in a very entertaining way. But so I had that oral storytelling happening as well. And my mum is a photographer, so she was a very visual storyteller, but she taught us how to tell a visual story as well. So yeah, I mean, I guess we're a very creative family, and I feel very lucky to have had those experiences as a kid, because, other kids maybe were spending a lot more time playing sport, and I just got to be in other whole worlds, reading books and having fun times watching my dad rehearse plays and in the dark room with my mother. So, it was great.
they say that maybe the thing that saves us humans from the new species we've created of AI is our ability to create and our ability to tell stories. And maybe that will be our edge that, the AI will keep us around for. So we'll keep my fingers crossed on that. So a lot of your research for the book came from your newspaper journalism and stuff then.
Yeah. Actually, like most of it came from experiences that I had as a newspaper journalist. And then I did, some extra reading and talked to some people that I had worked with who had actually, been in bushfire conditions as the Black Saturday fires were receding. And also just reading some of the firsthand accounts of my colleagues who lived, because the fires were very close to Melbourne. And I actually had a colleague at another newspaper who I was working the courts around with. His family home was destroyed and he very narrowly survived. So there was a lot of, primary sources that I could draw on to get that texture that I think is really important when you write something like this, to kind of make people be able to feel that they're there. Yeah.
There you go. And boots on the ground sort of. No.
Yeah. And one of the first things I learned when I was a cadet journalist is they got the Country Fire Association came in to do fire safety training with us.
Oh, really?
And it was designed because Australia has bushfires pretty regularly, and particularly in Victoria. And so it was designed so that if a bushfire happened, we could be sent out to cover it, and they would know that we'd behave safely. Yeah. And one of the first things that the firefighters told us was about the radiant heat, and how radiant heat is actually one of the most dangerous things in a bushfire. Which I'd never heard of before, but it gets so hot that it doesn't matter how you take shelter or where you take shelter, it'll just kill you. So, which is obviously very bleak, but also very interesting, I think. So
I think we have that in Las Vegas during the summers. There's 3 months of the radiant heat. So if you go outside, you turn to ash.
I've never been to Vegas. I'll have to go, but I'll avoid those times.
Don't go in the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a dry heat. That's what they always say. But no, radiant heat. Wow, that's pretty amazing. So note to self, stay out of the radiant heat anytime you're in Australia. Yeah. And just eat all the...
stay away from bushfires generally. They're not good.
If you're feeling safe, eat Tim Tams. Those are the best things to eat in Australia. At least I think so. There's probably a lot of other things there too.
You should ask someone to send you some caramello koalas.
Caramello koalas?
Caramello koalas.
Caramello koalas? There it is. Australia. Now, these aren't the ones that have chlamydia, right?
No, they're safe. They're safe.
I don't know how you guys got a bunch of koalas that got that. I just thought that was the funniest thing when I heard about it.
It's actually very common in the koala population, believe it or not. One Direction came to Australia, I guess a decade ago now, and they were holding koalas at one of the koala parks, and a koala peed on Harry Styles, and everyone was like, oh my God, did the koala give Harry Styles chlamydia? I'm not even joking. That's a real thing that happened.
That's the excuse I used last time I got it. So there you go. So I've got this pulled up. It's Cadbury dairy milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll order some. There's probably somebody who can get this to me locally, but I get the Tim Tams from. Are the Tim Tams? I think there's places like World Market that sell Tim Tams. Are they the exact same as?
Yeah. The ones that you get in America that are called Tim Tams are the same. They're exactly the same.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want that rich Australian flavor mixed with whatever else you guys put in there. That's probably something from the down under. So when you did your character research on, and when you fleshed out your characters for the book, how did you approach your character development? What were some of the things that went into it? Did you bring from people? It sounds like you have a pretty rich story base to pull from for all the reading you did. Did you pull anyone from personal life or?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think we all borrow from our lives when we write. And what's that thing that Nora Ephron said that everything is copy, right? So, yes, is the short answer. There's definitely characters in there that remind me of people I know. For diplomatic reasons, I probably shouldn't be too specific about which ones are which. I think that there's a lot of my more cynical side in the protagonist, Alison, and there's also a lot of my grandmother and my grandmother's best friend in her friend Sal, who is an older woman. That one I think is an obvious one, and I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. But
are any characters based on me? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, like the villain, obviously.
Oh, the villain. Oh. All right. The judge would probably agree with you on that. So there you go. What was your writing routine? I mean, obviously you took 10 years to do this. Did you somewhere you had to start ramping this and start getting really serious? So
I mean, when I was at Columbia doing my MFA, that's a really rigorous program, and you have to turn in a lot of work. And so I was turning in short stories, but I was trying to turn in a chunk of this every semester as well. And then in my final semester, I only turned in the book, the workshops. But I guess my routine when I really got into writing it was there's a little bar around the corner from the place I used to live in Greenpoint that I used to go to 3 times a week with my laptop and just sit there and type for 4 hours until I'd written as many words as I thought I needed to write that day. And then I would put the laptop away and play some pool. Yeah.
Pool. I love billiards. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just bar, pool.
Oh, there you go.
I love pool. Bar rules.
I used to be a good pool player, Shark, back in the day. That was when my eyes still worked. So there you go. So let's see. How do what advice do you give to aspiring authors who wish to write novels? I mean,
it's the most obvious advice, and it's not really that helpful. But really, my advice is just write it. Like, I have so many friends who are wonderful writers and who have great ideas, who talk a lot about their ideas, but then they don't have time, or they're doing their full-time job, or life gets in the way, and they don't actually sit down and write. And it seems like the most obvious thing to say, but truly that's going to get you so much further than any other piece of esoteric advice I could give you about post-it notes or character studies or where you get your inspiration from. It's just sit down, wrestle with that blank page, and just write until you've got enough words that you can form it into something that you can show someone else, and then you can start the process of revision,
Just write it. I started, when I wrote my first book, I started an accountability group, and it was just like everyone just try and write a day. And, I remember at first it was like, really, look at a whole hour. That's eternity. You're trying to write stuff. And then eventually it just starts to roll, and, picks up speed, and you get going, and eventually you're cooking and all that good stuff. I'm trying to get back on that track now. But yeah, just write. Like I would have, and what's funny was a lot of people in my accountability group, they were trying to edit as they would write. They make sure all the spelling and the periods are in the right place and stuff. And I was like, dude, you guys are just really slowing yourself. Just write the damn thing, because that thing's going to go through 50 edits. By the time you're done, don't worry about where the commas are. Just get it done. And so I was the only one who survived the book accountability group. So I think that was one of the things that I did what you said, just write. And I would just, I called it puking on the page, which is a scientific term, but I would just write. And, sometimes it was really awful. Well, most times it was. That's what the editor said when he threw out half the book. But, we got there. So there you go. Now, one of the mean things that they do to you as a new author is as soon as the day comes when the book drops, they have one question for you. What do you got next? And you're just like, I just poured my soul into this damn thing. What do you want from me, people? Any future new projects you're working on?
Yeah, I have started working on the next thing, what I hope will be the next thing, which I'm excited about.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be set in New York, which is obviously different for me because this one is set in Australia. But, I live here now, and I think the way that I write, I'm very interested in detail, like visceral detail, and I think that I'm better at observing a place where I am than imagining a place where I'm not, if that makes sense.
There you go. Well, New York is a fabric that there's a lot to take from, man.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this project is sort of in part inspired by everyone's journey through hell that was COVID, a lockdown, and sort of how that made everyone a little bit crazy. Mm-hmm. And
in New York, no way.
Yeah. Well, not just in New York. I think that happened everywhere, didn't it?
People crazy in New York? No way.
People crazy in New York. Yeah, I know this is very shocking, groundbreaking.
Been on the subway.
So yeah, it takes that sort of that hothouse, feverish kind of feeling, and then adds in some murders, and but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a bit more fun than this book, I think, but it's still going to be messy and dark and all of those kind of things that I think are good.
There you go. Well, people love that suspense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
when I was 10, my dad gave me a copy of Patricia Cornwell's first book. I think it's called Postmortem. Oh. And he said, I think you'd really like this. And I took it to school, and my teacher said, do your parents know that you're reading this book? And I said, oh, my dad gave it to me. He said I'd really like it.
Now we know who hurt you. There you go.
So yeah, I mean, I've loved the thrillers and the crime reads my whole life. And so, yeah, I'll probably still stick a little bit in that lane, but slightly different to this one. Yeah.
Now, in your bio, you mentioned you do not like the Australian spiders. Have you thought about writing a thriller based on those?
No, because then I would have to think too much about the spiders.
That's true.
They are truly horrendous.
You'd have dreams probably or nightmares of the spiders.
Because
you'd be focusing on them too much. Yeah, I see that's a good idea.
To this day, I still close my eyes whenever that horrible giant spider in Lord of the Rings comes out of its cave. I've never actually seen it. I'm like, I can't. No, thank you.
I've seen pictures of the real Australian spiders, and I just burn everything down if it came in my house. Let me lie down, fire, and move.
There are ones called huntsman spiders they're not poisonous, and so everyone always is like, you should be nice to them, but they are huge, and they do live in your house. They live inside.
They do?
I actually had I had one once. I came home from work late and no one else was home, and I was really tired, so I just crashed into my bed without turning the light on or anything in my room. And I had a cat at the time, and he jumped up on the bed, and then he just froze and was staring at the wall behind me. And I went, what are you looking at? What are you, please be looking at a moth, like please be looking at something very innocuous. And so I turn around, I turn the light on, and there is a huntsman spider the size of my hand on the wall directly behind the bed. Wow. I was like, okay, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight, and then we're burning the house down.
Yeah. So they're not venomous, but you can get a nausea and headache sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've never known anyone to be sick from a huntsman. And I also know people that encourage them into their homes because they don't have a phobia of spiders, and they like that they eat mosquitoes and other things. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's. I agree with you. I'm on the same page. Hey, I got an idea for you for a book in New York. For some reason in TikTok, I picked these up. I think there's a channel that's doing it, and it's like the Rats of New York, and they have these videos of rats fighting over food and pizza. Remember the pizza rat?
Pizza rat.
Yeah. So it's kind of based on that, and so it's just videos of all these rats in the the subway and stuff running around, and they're fighting over food, and it's just kind of how oblivious people are to it. They're just like, it's a bunch of rats fighting over pizza, whatever.
It's true. There are so many rats in the subway that you just kind of, you're like, oh, there's one of my friends just hanging out, you know?
Yeah, they have names. So, Sarah, anything more you want to tease out or pitch on the book as we go out?
I would just say that if you're a person that's interested in Australian culture, or if you're interested in exploring ideas around grief and post-traumatic stress, but also solving an interesting mystery, then I think it's a great read. And I had a lot of fun writing it, and I really am very excited to share it with the world now. It feels like it's been, gestating. I feel like I'm an elephant parent or something. It's just been gestating for so long. But yeah, I really hope that people read it and that they enjoy it and they take something meaningful from it, because that's the whole point of this kind of exchange, really, isn't it?
There you go. Well, very exciting. Congratulations on getting your first
Thank
book
you.
out there. There you go. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun with it. And give us .coms wherever you want people to get to know you on the interwebs.
Yeah, so just Sarah Jane Marie, which is spelled Maree, and that's my Instagram, that's my X handle, and that's my Facebook as well. So that's where I am.
Order it up, folks, wherever fine books are sold. Radiant Heat, January 23rd, 2024. Sarah Jane Collins, and watch for her future stuff that she works on. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the Tickety Talkety, and Chris Voss, Facebook.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.